Well, hey, everybody, what's up? Welcome to episode number 77 of the White Knuckle podcast, powered by Ozonics. Undetectable, undeniable. Welcome to episode number 77 of the White Knuckle podcast. Thanks for joining us today. Today we have a show for you that is again brought to you from Deer Fest, which happened in the first weekend of August over in West Bend, Wisconsin. We got a chance to sit down with Craig Enervold, who now works for Ozonics. Craig previously was employed by Scheels, I believe, as the buyer. He'll talk about that in the show coming up. But he and Todd became friends over the course of the years, and Craig is the guy who is instrumental in at least coaxing Todd into using Ozonics for the first time. So you're going to hear how that story unfolded way back when Craig brought some units down to Todd's place in Iowa, and they went out and did some velvet filming. And needless to say, I got a phone call the next day from Todd, and he was blown away. So hope you enjoy this one. I want to remind everyone that we're going to have a new bundle coming out from Ozonics. It's going to be called the White Knuckle Run and Gun Package. As time allows, I will make it available to you once they're able to make it available to us. So keep your ears peeled or eyes peeled on social media. With that, let's get on with the show. Here is our interview with Mr. Craig Enervold. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the White Knuckle podcast. We are here at the 2018 Deer Fest, and today I am joined by my co-host Todd, my other co-host Dave, and Craig Enervold from Ozonics. Craig and Todd have quite a history. Am I right?
Oh, yeah. Dude, I met Craig.
And not like a weird history.
No, a great history.
Great history. It goes back probably 20 years darn near to the ETA show. I used to help Lone Wolf back in the day at the booth, and Craig was a buyer for Scheels. And so over a period of time, we became buddies, and he was a hardcore hunter and an absolute monster killer. And we both just kind of became buddies, and then Ozonics kind of came on the scene, and he kept giving me a hard time about it, like for 3 years, working me basically about telling me about this Ozonics and how it truly can beat Whitetail's nose, and I thought he was full of it. So finally I told him, I said, all right, if you want me to try this stupid machine, you're going to have to come to Iowa and film with me. So he did. He brought the old black box down to Iowa. We went out and filmed, and that was the first time I've ever seen what Ozonics can do, and we had several mature deer come out and just sniff the wind and go right back to feeding, and I don't think I honestly slept for about 3 days after that.
I remember your mouth hanging open, and it's like, did that just happen?
I couldn't believe it, and we got it all on video years ago. I think it's still in the original Ozonics videos or whatever, but Craig was one of these guys. You meet a lot of different people in the industry, and I don't know, like, of all the people I've met, Craig is definitely one of the most hardcore hunters I know. And also a killer. He kills monsters in Wisconsin and Dakotas and all over the place. So when you meet guys like Craig, we just were kindred spirits and just really got along really, really well. But Craig, you're from Wisconsin, correct?
Actually from resident of North Dakota, but basically from Minnesota.
Okay, Minnesota. I'm sorry.
Minnesota.
I'm in Wisconsin mode here. But So tell us, folks, a little bit about how you got hunting, how you ended up with Ozonics.
Okay. Well, I had the unique opportunity of being the first customer that Ozonics ever had. They just kind of get started with the unit we talked about, that big 5-pound brick they started out with, the HR100, and I was super skeptical being an archery buyer. You're seeing all the product come through and just really skeptical about what you can fit in your store and what you can't. And so anyhow, they showed up at the store, 3 guys from Ozonics, and they had a very compelling case of something I'd never heard of before. It just totally defied everything I've ever heard of. And so they explained everything, and they said, okay, here's the deal. Scott calls me, and Scott goes, hey, I'm going to send you a unit for free. And don't pay any attention to wind direction, getting clean, but I want you to call me the next day and tell me what happens. Nobody ever has had that confidence in a product to say that. No wind direct, don't get clean, but call me the next day, tell me what happened. And I had 2 encounters the first night, a jaw-dropping deal, like no way did that just happen. And I mean, I was on board from day one, and that was like almost 12 years ago. And ever since that, I said, you know what, I just got away with something I never would have with 2 mature does And I called Scott and I said, man, if it worked like it did for me last night, I said the state of Minnesota will find a way to ban it. It was that good. That's my exact words to it. They're going to ban it because that just shouldn't happen.
Yeah. So and this was with the I call it the black shoebox that we hung off a real tree hanger up in the tree.
How much do those suckers weigh? Like 8 pounds?
No, 5 pounds.
5 pounds.
5 pounds.
After I realized what they did, Kyle and I were bringing 3 of those in the field with us. I mean, it was like a whole backpack worth of Ozonics.
I lugged 2 of them up, and I swear I was toting up a toilet bowl. I mean, that's what it felt like. It's like, holy cow, is this thing heavy?
I mean, the first time I remember using it, I felt like, what is this contraption? But to better explain Craig's background and what he was doing professionally at the time, he was basically the head buyer for all the Scheels stores out of the Fargo, North Dakota store.
Our corporate office. Fargo,
if you can imagine the number of gimmicks and junk products that Craig has probably tried to sell, have turned people down to sell over the years, you're talking thousands and thousands of different just scent elimination products. So Craig's about the most skeptical person you could ever try to prove something like this to. So when Craig told me about it, I kind of took it from who it was coming from, and it was a little bit more believable, and that's kind of what got me hooked on it.
Yeah. Well, Scott still brings up sometimes, and I don't remember I said this, but I've been known to say some things that'll just... Anyhow, I said, if this thing is really what you say it is, I'll be your biggest disciple. If it doesn't, I'll bury you. And he always brings that up. He said, I will bury you. So I don't remember saying that, but he says, no, that's your exact words, that I'll bury you. And it's like... I said, man, and I stuck to it. I said, it worked. And I said, I'll be your greatest disciple. I retired from Scheels 2 years ago. And the only thing I want to do other than hunt and fish the rest of my life was just go out and talk about Ozonics and ozone and what it can bring to the hunter.
Oh, and it's an amazing product. You've seen, I think, anybody who's been paying attention in the hunting industry, the competitors have absolutely come out of the woodwork with all these different ozone generators from everything. But what I'm going to say right now is the truth. Unless you are running an ozone unit above your head in the field, you might as well leave all that other stuff at home. It doesn't matter. Unless you can hold your breath for 3 hours at a time, because you're emitting that smell constantly. And that's why Ozonics kind of, it sounds goofy, but when you start thinking about the science of it, and then you hear Scott Elrod, the inventor's, his background in dentistry and how they used to use these machines when they were cauterizing tissue and surgical applications, where basically they're burning human flesh, which just smells rancid and makes people sick. So they'd use these ozone machines to deposit ozone over top of that smoke and that smell, and it would just neutralize the cell. And that's what gave them the idea. But it's an absolutely amazing story, and I know you know as well what they went through to build that brand and the testing and, oh my Lord, the marketing money just to get people to believe that something could work like this. But I will say this much. Without Ozonics, I would probably have not killed 2 or 3 of my biggest bucks, because they either caught the Ozonics or I had a doe nearby that caught it, and it gives you that element of time where you can, dude, it's like stealing candy from a baby. I mean, it just gives you such a huge advantage, especially in where the country that I'm hunting is a lot of big timber, deep ravines and things, and sure enough, where you find all that big buck sign, that their core areas are usually located in those bluffs or in the bottoms of those bluffs, where they can just get huge swifts of scent constantly just swirling down in there. And that's when you go in those sets and you don't know what the wind's going to be. You're already in there, so it's not like you're going to tear your stuff out if the wind's not perfect. And that's where Ozonics is like the greatest insurance policy ever.
Yeah, I got some bluff country, Wisconsin, just like you're describing, a good buddy of mine, and he's got a section of land that they called Hellhole. And they call it because he could never hunt it. You got some of these gullies and stuff that kind of meet in the middle. He got busted every time. Yep. I walked in there with my ozone machines, and I ended up killing the biggest buck he's ever shot on his property. The 3rd year I was there, got another one the next year, and it's like, hey, this is something that couldn't be hunted, and we turned an area that was untouchable into an area that you can get into now and hunt. So,
and the great part about those specific spots, because I've got like 10 of them in my brain already, usually bucks love to bed on those adjacent ridges just over those bottoms, so that, and because generally in those bottoms are where everything comes together, there's a lot of your main trails. So they like to bed up just above those, where they can basically monitor the does that are coming and going during the rut. And that's what I found to be one of my greatest tactics. But you get in those spots, they're obvious. I mean, you'll see shredded trees, all sorts of sign. But when you hunt those and you've got the protection of Ozonics, they feel so comfortable in those areas, they become vulnerable. And you can basically manipulate that and completely take advantage. But just to be able to hunt those spots that you've never been able to hunt with that insurance policy in your backpack, so to speak, when you're going out, it just changes your approach to hunting, really. It opens up the opportunities in your areas that you normally, like those hellhole spots where you just man, you just can't get in there because the last time you tried or somebody tried, you sat and listened to deer snort at you the whole time, or you realize, you just can't hunt that spot. So especially mid-rut, late rut, when maybe plan A and plan B, that's when Ozonics are killer for me, is because I like to dive into some of those spots that I would normally just stay the heck out of.
Leave them alone until it's time.
But then when it's time and, you've exhausted every other opportunity, then you dive into those super secure areas. But does are the biggest issue. You got to get through the does in order to kill the bucks. So that's where Ozonics are just absolutely money, man.
And any of us that have used them have seen great results with those. But I'm just curious, how does that affect the rest of your scent control regimen? What does the rest of it look like? Or are you more lax with certain things now because of that, or no?
It depends. And obviously there's times you come in, you're setting up to close to a bedding area, so you're always cautious as far as how you're going to walk in. And I got a property I'm hunting now. It's got 100 to 200 deer on it all the time. And there's no such thing as like having deer down or upwind of you all the time. There's a time that you're going to have deer downwind of you all the time, and there's just no way getting away with it. And so, obviously, for me, it's kind of watching the trails you're walking in on, and for the most part, use a little bit of the wind, but say, look, I got one shot here, and the wind's not exactly in my favor. I'm going for it anyhow. But I don't do any of the spray down stuff. I do use ozone on my clothing, so I prepare for that. I watch the trails going in as much as possible. And that's probably the biggest thing, is that I just kind of stay away from the other stuff and kind of let the ozone kind of do its thing. And just kind of.
And from my scent regimen, usually I always, back in the days when we used to be really serious about trying to keep our clothes clean, about day 5 or 6 of the rut, when you're freaking exhausted, you've hardly been sleeping, you're stressed out, you're trying to juggle business and hunting, like all that prep goes out the window. You just grab your clothes and you go hunting. And to me, that's my style more so, because if I was hunting the same area over and over and over again, I'd be way more concerned about the scent I have. But because of my style of hunting and bouncing around and strategically hunting, I almost want to put that human scent down in some cases where they're going to catch it coming through. But to me, what Ozonics does, if you're hunting, we hear guys talk about hunting the wind all the time. And we mentioned it yesterday in our seminar. One of my big topics is hunting bucks so that they have the wind in their favor, or at least setting it up so that they believe they have the wind in their favor. Because that's when you're going to intercept them. That's when you're going to have an opportunity, is when they think they're safe. So if you're putting yourself on a field edge with the wind completely in your favor, where a buck is going to walk out toward that field or in a bedding area, whatever, and he doesn't have that confidence, you're just not going to see him. So, yeah, it's great if you can sit in a spot and have the wind perfect, but I don't care about that spot. I care about the spot I can kill that buck in, and it's never in the spot where I have the wind completely controlled. I mean, that just doesn't exist. Because if it did, they're not going to feel comfortable walking around. They've lost their most powerful weapon, which is their nose. So you just got to think of it from a whitetail's perspective and not a hunter's perspective, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. Yep, agreed.
So you mentioned that Craig's a big buck killer.
Oh, dude. He's killed some mega bucks up.
Tell us.
Every year, I wait for the pictures, dude.
Yep. I just, again, good property, and obviously Minnesota is not one of the states that's blessed with, a lot of 150, 170 stuff. So you really got to work hard and use the cameras and finding the property. And I'd rather be a horrible hunter and have great property than the opposite, because good property and good deer are where it starts. But just kind of understanding you're going after a totally different animal. I mean, it's just I found that a mature deer, 4 or 5 or 6 year old deer, is a totally different animal, where it's the most random animal in the woods. Deer will follow trails, but mature deer do everything you're not expecting them to do. They're totally random, and they'll show up on a trail or an area that they weren't supposed to be there. And that's how they got old. They're totally random, and I can't describe any different than that. They're unpredictable, and you got to do hunting the funnels and the ridge tops and things like that. You got to do something where they're prone to making a little mistake. And you capitalize on that, and it's just like, it's not like every week I go out to get an opportunity, but once or twice a fall you get a shot at a 150 plus buck, and that's it. I mean, it's just not like every day you pop yourself on a trail, they're going to come down. It doesn't happen that way. They are super random, like no other animal in the woods. And this guy, you do everything different to accommodate that.
Now, are you going out and targeting? Are you finding these bucks and then trying to find a way to hunt them where they are, or is this all on your own ground?
No. I target specific animals. I find them. So with cameras, I'll run 25 cameras on one property and zero in on it, then move the cameras out of there and kind of wait, because I know they're going to spend 80% of their time, and it's just getting in there in the right moment and do that. And last year I had the two biggest deer on the property, full draw on both of them within 15 minutes apart, the same day. And it's just one of those things that worked out. They were just in there, and in the end of October, where they shouldn't have been together, and they were. And talk about random. These deer just meandered through there and just kind of watched the other deer like a bull elk does to cows. They do the same thing. They just watch the other deer, and but two different times I was full draw on them, couldn't get a shot. And I just sat there and looked and says, why are they doing what they're doing? But it all made sense. It was all random. But I got the right spot, the right tree, and the right condition, and had the opportunity. So,
yeah, and I think what I've kind of found is the randomness of those big bucks means you have to move closer and closer to the core area, because it's just like, I don't know, it's math, I guess, statistics. Further away they get from that core area, they have so many options. So you got to get tight, so you can catch them in that smaller sized area. But you probably have the same philosophy as working from the outside in. But how aggressive do you get when you know where he's at? I mean, do you do a lot of run and gun type stuff? You know some of the tactics we use.
Yeah, I'll do a fresh set. I mean, I don't like, okay, I'm going to go to this stand. There's sometimes that, look, it moved. That the deer I had the opportunity last year on, I had an encounter with him 3 years ago. 15 yards from where I had the encounter this last fall. So, I mean, I know where his core was and where all the camera pictures are coming from, but he's like, at one time he's a quarter mile away, but he's within this core, and there's only so many things that'll work. And so it's the right time, the right moment, the right wind, and I got in on him. You know, but I don't like get super aggressive unless it's absolutely right, because once they know they're there, then the does go and then they go, and things change. The area will go dormant if he nails you.
Yeah.
You know, so it's got to be right.
And a lot of people are wondering, like, well, how do you know? Well, it's just experience. Over the years, you've been hunting all these different bucks, same thing with me, and now you just build that instinct where you just know in your gut what to do, when to do it. And sometimes I think guys need to follow that gut a little bit more and not use their brain as much. I think you can kind of sometimes overanalyze things, especially when you're hunting with other guys, because everybody's got an opinion, right? So I think that's why I've been successful over the years. I've never been afraid to follow my own gut and do something different than anybody else and make it my own. And that's where I've really, I think, had some great success.
Well, it's interesting you use the word random, because I guess I've always been programmed to believe that nothing they do is random. You know, that they have a reason for every movement, for every trail. Yep. So it's interesting to hear you use that word.
Dude, how many times have you set up on a buck from the night before and had him not show? I'm hundreds. And I still try. I mean, because there's occasionally, but just like what Craig said, you watch them come out of a trail onto a field to feed one night. If they do the same thing the next night, consider it a freaking miracle.
Would it be fair to say that they're predictable to the extent that they're predictable for a few days a year?
Yes.
In other words, if you're hunting hill country, they're likely to be running, you know, on this point or that point or whatever. Outside of that, they're relatively random. You know, I'd like to draw a line here between you and Todd and Dave and I and say that there's a whole bunch of experience on this side of the line and there's a whole bunch of experience on this side of the line, and there's just two different kinds of experiences. We've spent the majority of our lives hunting the biggest deer, probably a 3-year-old, you know, and occasionally a 5-year-old. And the one thing that I've noticed in moving into the area that I am now is that class of deer is higher, and they absolutely, you're right. They do things so much differently. Like, for instance, as soon as I touch the brakes on my truck, it's like they know. And they're heading for the woods when the rest of the deer are all out in the field like, wait, what's going on? But, you know, I guess what piece of advice would you give, either of you, to somebody who maybe finds themselves in a position where they haven't been able to hunt that buck before and they really want to, whether it's switching to public ground like I did last year, and then that just ups the I guess, the challenge, but additionally it raises the bar in terms of what you're after, because you're dealing with bigger ground. Is there anything that you could say or that you would give in terms of advice to someone who's taking on either new ground or going into something like public hunting?
Yeah, I'd say for me, it's like I always pursue the back door. I kind of look over the years, if I have to take a boat and come in the back way on the river, I'll do that. If I have to like park and walk through a bunch of woods that takes a long time, I'll do that. But there's a front door, and the front door is kind of what causes the problem. If you find the back door and can access an area where it's not going to screw things up, when the 10 does come in the morning, they got to walk over your trail to get there. I look for the back door whenever possible. I look and say, look, it's going to be harder to get here, but I don't care if I have to come in the backside and walk an extra half mile, or use a boat, or put hip boots on and walk the riverbank down and then come in. That is key, because they don't give you many opportunities. Once they find out that you're there, your opportunity every time you hunt, it seems to go down. So the time's right, the wind is right, and say, this is the way I'm going to get it. I'm going to ride my fat tire bike from an adjacent property, come in the back door, and I think the back door is what's been the best thing for me, is like, how do you get in on them without them finding you first? Picking up on your trail, going into your stand, using the front door is probably the biggest key I've had. And I used to hunt area on the river, Minnesota, North Dakota border, and I would canoe to my stand in and out of it, just so I didn't have to go through the deer in the morning. And because again, you blow the deer out, they like you're a bowling ball through bowling pins. You're spreading them out, and good luck getting them to come in where you want to in the morning. And so whatever it took, if I have to use a bike to get to it, if I have to walk an extra half mile around, take a boat, put on hip boots, whatever it is, I'm looking for the back door.
That's very cool.
And that's kind of what you've created.
Absolutely. And you almost have to become random like the bucks.
Yep.
And that randomness is doing things that no human has ever thought to do before. And when you do those things, I'm not going to say the word easy isn't, but when you put all the pieces together and you create that situation, it's easy to kill these big bucks, because they've never, it's like being a sniper in the military or something. You really have to consider where these guys are set up. They're almost like a sniper. Mm-hmm. And so how do you kill that sniper? And you just have to do things that are unconventional to kill those unconventional bucks.
That's totally unconventional. You're doing things, everybody else does it this way. Yep. They're not killing deer. You got to do things different, and it takes work, and these bucks aren't going to come easy. Yep. And like I said, it's just you set up, you look for that back door, and that's been the key for me. I don't care what it takes. If I have to haul a canoe in, an electric motor, or throw on hip boots and walk through, it doesn't matter. I'm looking for the back door, because they're there for a reason. It's because they found their core area where they know if somebody comes in any direction, they can find them. Yep. And when you find that back door and you get in on them, man, everything changes for you.
One other really good tip, like for me, we were talking about ghost bucks in our seminars and stuff. When I started to really kind of change my approach and started killing some of these mature ghost bucks that I call them, the bucks that nobody else in my area could kill, 6-7-year-old deer. If you're hunting an area that you've been hunting for years and you're not seeing those big adult deer and you're hunting the same stands that you've always been hunting, a really good start is getting about 100 yards downwind of where you've always hunted before and finding a unique way of getting in there. You probably have been patterned on your property like I have, and especially, as humans, we want to hunt areas we're familiar with. We like to go to those same stands because we know we got awesome shooting in all directions. Some guys like hunting on the field edges so you can see 500 yards and see everything that's happening. Get off the field edges, get into the thicker timber, and get downwind of where you or your neighbors have been hunting all these years, and I'll tell you, you'd be shocked at what you'll see 100 yards downwind of where they have patterned you. Because they know you're there, but because of the power of their nose, they feel comfortable going downwind and making sure that, okay, the coast is clear before they're going to go up in that field edge or hit that scrape or all that stuff. So sometimes you got to get off those obvious spots, and the obvious spots are where those bucks would have died when they were 3 or 4 years old. So you got to change your approach and just say, you know what? I'd rather see the buck I'm trying to kill than 20 young deer chasing does around all night. But you got to kind of, depending on what your goals are, you really got to approach it from a standpoint of what do you want to achieve? Are you going after that one buck, or you just want to hunt a bunch? And I think your approach has to really, really be directed directly toward what your end goal or your end result you want.
And that goal can be achieved if you want to shoot a big buck and you want to hunt a lot. You're just going to have to expand your horizons. Whether you own 100 acres, and like Scott Buckley, for instance, he owns 200 acres, but he still hunts a bunch of public. Yep. Why? Because he doesn't want to blow these deer out. Because I think the one thing that I've learned from listening to guys like you guys over and over again is that they're not stupid. I mean, they will blow out if you overhunt them. And I think of the times that you and I 6-7 days in a row on 40 acres. We walk in the same way, we walk out the same way. But at the same time, we're not hunting the same class of deer. At least I'm telling myself that because I feel better about the time that we spent out there.
Well, you rationalize it that you're after cruising bucks. And so whatever I screw up today, the buck I see tomorrow may have no prior knowledge of that.
Sure. Yeah.
And that's the kind of grounds we're hunting because you're just hoping maybe the neighbors push them to you or whatever. It's much more random.
And that's more common. I mean, I think most guys can relate to that. I know that's how I grew up hunting, and until you meet the right people along the way. Now with social media and these podcasts and stuff, you can get a lot of great information from killer hunters easily. But back in the day, 20 years ago, I mean, there was no social media, so it was who you knew in camp, and sometimes you're hunting with the wrong group of guys who don't know any better, and if you learn from that same group, it's going to set you back, so to speak. So sometimes the best thing you can do is just go out on your own, and that's kind of where I got to, is I wanted to learn on my own, figure out my own tactics, and throw myself to the wolves. But you got to make a lot of mistakes, in order to learn from them. I
was just going to ask, I've spent a considerable amount of time with Todd, for obvious reasons, but would you say that you're primarily self-taught through mistakes?
No question. I mean, I didn't have anybody kind of like to teach. You get property and you kind of learn, you make the mistakes. So what happened tonight? And yeah, I made a ton of them. I mean, until I started figuring out, so you know what, this is the only way I'm going to get on this deer is to change, totally do something different that nobody else would do, and totally unsuspecting of the deer itself. It's like you just slap them by doing something they've never seen before, and that's the big things, but ton of mistakes.
So I'll ask the same question I've asked pretty much every guest that we have that has killed a significant amount of big deer, and that is, in order to be successful in killing those big deer, do you have to learn to love the failure?
Boy, great question. It's the greatest teacher. Failure, it's the greatest teacher there is, and it's like every time something happens to you, you always look at, so what, you always correct yourself. So what could I change singly that would have made a difference in tonight or this morning's sit? Every single time, what if I could do this all over again? What would I do differently? It happens even now. I don't care how many mistakes I made, I still make them. And it's like, if I had just done this and not got greedy or worked a little bit harder, it would have made the big difference for me.
I think over the years, I think they're easier to swallow.
Oh, yeah.
But dude, every year it's the same thing. You put yourself up on a pedestal, and boy, it doesn't take very long for those whitetails to bring you right back down to earth.
Good old-fashioned butt handing.
That's right.
Yeah, every year it's like it happens.
But you gotta strike it to a learning experience. I mean, I've blown out one of the most unbelievable moments of my life is when we had a rusty nail, and I was a little too aggressive in calling him, and he ended up busting Kyle trying to move a camera or something. But when he blew out of there, I felt like unloading my entire stomach on the stand, at that moment. I was just like, oh, are you kidding me? But I learned something in the process. I learned where he was at, and it turned out about a week later I went right back in from the back door and killed him right in the same general area within 56 yards where we blew him out. So in that moment, and it's been like that consistently through the years, as the harder the learning lessons are, generally the more you learn from them, and you just got to chalk it up to a learning experience and keep at it, get back on the horse and keep grinding. That's the only solution I've ever had, and I think that's a part of, I think any really good whitetail hunters, I think, are the types of guys who really like to push themselves. Usually are pretty physically fit, really good in their careers, good family people. Well, okay, maybe not good family people if you're a hardcore hunter. Sometimes that's a word. It's caused a lot of, but generally
you're about to find out.
Yeah, right. And I think in general, usually the killers are successful in their lives for the same reason, is that they don't give up. And they will, in business and everything else, you're gonna have good days and bad days, but you just got to keep frickin' going, keep grinding, and like Cam Hayes says, keep hammering. And that's really the only secret. But at the same time, I think sometimes guys have the illusion that the more time they spend in the field equals success. And that's not the case. I'd rather spend 10 minutes in the right spot than 5 hours or a day or a week hunting a field edge that I will never have a chance of killing those deer. So that's one of the things that I've learned from guys like Andre DeQuisto over the years. Like, some of the most impatient hunters impatient people are the best hunters, because if they're not on the action, they're going to find the action, and that's where you got to be.
Yeah. I always think is if I got a good deer on the property, I get one chance, and that's what I set up for. I got one opportunity, and that's what I always go in on. Is I'm not going there until everything is just right, because if everything's right, you get the chance, you get them. If you don't, then it might be a long fall for you. But I've done some crazy stuff. I've slept overnight in a ground blind to get in the backside of the deer, because I'm not going through in the morning. I'll get done. I'll stay in my ground blind. I'll sleep in the thing.
Is this freaking awesome?
I swear, I will sleep in the ground blind. I've done it several different times because I want to get the deer out and be already in their back door, slip into the stand, and I won't bother them coming in. It's crazy, but I tell you what, I've done it because it's the only way to do it on them.
Yep.
So you slept in a ground blind.
Was it you that was sleeping in trees too?
I didn't sleep in trees. I used to kill all my deer without a tree stand. I used to just hang in the branches. I killed more Pope-and-Young bucks who standing in branches of trees than out of a tree stand.
Yeah, he's freaking nuts.
True story.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, we've got a friend who Bobby Radke, he hunts out of big oak trees, or when he did bow hunt, he'd find those big oak trees and just stand on the limbs.
Yep.
And he always has success as well. Well, we know that you got to get back to the Ozonics booth, but one of the questions that I wanted to ask you is, throughout your career, how have you found that your career and your success in your career is carried over into hunting?
Being exposed to people and being exposed to the product. I mean, working for Scheels, we were dealing with 150 vendors, and so you talk to people in the industry, you talk to reps, you talk to like Todd, who's out there. It's that you meet a lot of people, and I absorb everything. If I pick up something that's a little bit different and I think it'll benefit me, I'm all ears. Tell me about it. And so I would really use people, again, everybody out there. So the landowners, the reps, the tree stand, the Andres of the world that you sit and visit with a little bit. And you just pick up these little tidbits here and there, and you take them home and apply them to your set. It just, it's such a big learning thing from using other people.
And I think you hit the nail on the head. A willingness to learn, having an open mind.
Oh yeah.
I think some guys have this there's some arrogant folks in hunting. Let's just put it that way. And to me, that's when you think that you know what you know and that you know the right way, you're basically putting up a brick wall of knowledge. And to me, I've always seeked that knowledge, and I think that a good hunter always wants to learn constantly more and more. And how many years have you been hunting, Craig?
I started hunting in 1978.
Holy smoke. So that's basically 39 years. I'm at 29 right now myself, and I still amaze myself each year when I look back at the season and go, boy, I didn't know what the heck I was doing in that whether it's a spot or a blind or a wind situation or a calling situation, there's always something that you can learn. And I think that's what you just got to strive for knowledge. And if you have that mindset that you're always going to want to learn and always be willing to learn and listen to other people's opinions and listen to other people's tactics, the more open-minded you are, the more success you will see.
Yep.
Let me ask you this, and it's kind of a selfish question, but I have a 16-year-old son who's loving this bow hunting thing, but I know he's sick to death of hearing me say, no, the wind's wrong there, man. You can't do this. You can't do that. And he's looking at me like, I just want to go sit a tree.
Just hunt.
Yeah, I mean, do I just let him do it? I mean, is it, you know what I mean? How do you balance that out with trying to guide someone versus, well, he's got to see it for himself, or otherwise it's just his old man.
Yeah, there's that other guy out there, the guy that fishes unconventionally, he's catching fish, and you go, that can't be that way. Like my wife fishing, she drags the hook through the weeds, and she comes up with more fish than me sometimes because I'm trying to finesse them. And there's some guys that just flat out, they just go after it, and it's like, you know what, I don't care, I'm going in, and they stumble into decent luck. So it works sometimes for people that are just over-aggressive. I'm hunting it, I don't care, I'm going in there. And sometimes they'll make a mistake. And so, I don't know, I just like, yeah, you got to learn that way. And if he's 16, he's going to learn the school of hard knocks. He'll make the mistakes and go, if you would have done it differently. And same thing for me. I was 17 years old and got into archery, and I don't even want to look back and think about all the stupid things that I did. But you know what? If it wasn't for the stupid things, I wouldn't be where I am right now. And
that's what I was going to say. I think the best thing for me as a hunter was first growing up in Michigan, hunting hard areas with lots and lots of hunting pressure. But the other thing was that my dad wasn't a serious hunter. And we were just talking to Dan Enfold about it a couple weeks ago. He said, he pushed his kids really hard to get into hunting. And I remember Andre had the same thing. He had young kids, and it's like, how can you be the son of these guys who are just absolute whitetail maniacs? But I think for my situation, my wife's pregnant right now. For me, becoming a man was, I learned through hunting, was going out in the dark on your own for the first time with a flashlight, sitting up in a tree stand, letting that light come, or in the evening where the dark comes and you have to climb down. To me, those are the building blocks that if you hold your kids' hands and do all that work for them, they're not going to appreciate it and they're not going to learn. But they have to fail to learn. So I think someday if our children want to hunt, I want them to hunt alone and without cameras and all that. I want them to learn how to hunt first and learn that connection with the earth and the animals that you're hunting. Because I think sometimes we get lost in this gadgetry as we're sitting here doing a podcast with more electrical cords than we have in our home probably. But we get lost in this gadgetry and in the industry and all the products and bows and arrows and ozonics. Sometimes the best thing you can do is just go hunting. Shoot a doe, learn from that experience, miss a deer, you're going to wound some along the way. That just has to happen, and I think I'm going to throw my kids to it, man. Let them go make those mistakes on their own. And hopefully they don't fall out of a tree stand in the process. But
they're giddy. They just want to hunt.
Absolutely.
And let them hunt. And like I said, I didn't have a dad that took me. It's just like I made the mistakes, did stupid things, the wind was wrong. And I got burned, and boy, it's the smell of being burned.
Yep.
I always tell you, you had to touch the hot stove to know that it's hot, and that's kind of what it's been. So,
dude, I'm no joke. First 5-6 years of hunting, I never even heard anybody talk about wind. We just went hunting.
Yeah. Yeah.
No.
What's wind? Just hunt. I see deer there every night. I'm going there.
Yep. We used to hunt the same stands every single day, and then I just through just observation. I'm like, I'm sitting in this stand, the deer over there, and it only took me a few times to watch the deer over there before I'm like, well, why don't I move over there? And then slowly but surely, you just start doing things that your intuition and your gut just say, go for it. And I think sometimes maybe if you're hunting with a big family or close people that have an eye on you, or you're under their umbrella, so to speak, you're not going to be able to go out there and try those things, and because they want you to hunt the way they hunt. And so I think, with all the scent elimination and QDMA and all this stuff and hunting these huge, huge bucks, sometimes you just get caught up in it where you got to have fun too.
Yep. That's what it's all about in the end.
Well, there you have it, our interview with Craig Enervold from Ozonics. I don't think Craig could have said it any better than he did there at the end. Before we let you go here, we're going to break away to Jeff Bergman from Providence Marketing. Jeff represents Ozonics, and he's going to fill everybody in on what's going on with the recent developments and the lawsuit that you've all heard about, and we've gotten tons of emails asking about. Jeff is going to give us a short clarification on what's going on with that whole deal, just because we asked him to, and we're getting tons of emails about it. So here's Jeff and Todd talking about what's going on with Ozonics, and then they talk a little bit about hunting and Ozonics. So here's Todd's interview with Mr. Jeff Bergman.
Well, welcome, everybody. This is Todd Prinas from the White Knuckle Productions web show and podcast. And today I've got Jeff Bergman with me, who is a representative for Ozonics, does a lot of the marketing and advertising-related stuff. We work with Jeff as our sponsor contact, so to speak, with Ozonics. But Jeff knows that I've been like one of the most hardcore Ozonics fans from over the years.
And probably one of the most vocal, and we appreciate it.
That's right. And I've been passionate about it because I tried so many scent elimination products leading up to Ozonics over the years where I just given up. I just, everything was a gimmick. I couldn't believe people were still promoting this stuff. You just get busted over and over. So once I finally got the Ozonics aha moment, I became like in the trenches with Scott and Dennis and the guys originally right from the beginning. And so I've been following Scott's story and also the development and innovation that Ozonics has been doing all these years. And as an engineer myself and an entrepreneur and a product engineer, they've continued to amaze me, time after time after time. And so what we're going to kind of discuss today a little bit is recently there's been a competitive product from one of your competitors that have come out. What would you like to tell us about?
Well, obviously, Ozonics has really kind of spearheaded the entire industry of ozone being used in a hunting application, and they've been at it for a number of years. And there have been a lot of people who have come out with new products in the last couple of years, which I think is a testament to the technology. For so many years, there were people that were just basically saying it was black magic, this was snake oil, it doesn't work at all. And they were kind of the lone voice in the wilderness saying this is proven technology. And so it's edifying to see that many people now accepting this technology and understanding truly how effective it is as an oxidant and for eliminating odor. Ozonics has patented the technology of utilizing the product in the field in a hunting purpose. And recently there have been a number of people who have come out with products in an attempt to capitalize on that market. And basically what we believe is to really pilfer or steal this intellectual property. As you know, as an entrepreneur and as a designer, you spend a lot of time and energy and effort developing something, and a lot goes into it. And we feel like we've removed all the stones, we've plowed the field, and others are now trying to come in and plant behind us. And so competitors have come in. A lawsuit has been filed. We believe we own the intellectual property, and we've got the patents that we've successfully defended in the past. And right now it's in the court's hands, and they'll see what they decide. Ultimately, regardless of the results, Ozonics is going to continue to innovate and continue to find ways to enhance the use of ozone in a hunting situation so that we can help hunters be more successful in the woods.
Well, and I know this much just from Scott and Dennis, and just being a part of the group for so many years, and being a part of the development really of these products, being in some of those initial meetings before the new 300 units and all these different technologies. Scott and Dennis have spent literally millions of dollars to create this situation that the product works, it's proven, and that the marketplace understands that. And if you don't know much about Ozonics, I can't tell you that it's not been an easy journey.
No, it's been very difficult because, again, to your point, a lot of people have been burned in the past. They've been promised and over-promised products that would perform, and here we have one that we believe that, and we know it does, scientifically proven. But to get people to accept it, you can't see it. You can smell it when you're close to it, but does it really work? Are you just introducing another odor? They don't understand the technology, and until you truly understand the technology, people are they're hesitant. They're skeptical, and so it just takes a lot of.
And I think we all were.
It takes that moment.
Yep.
Like you said, you have to have that aha moment where you said, I have a deer at 12 yards. I've been watching it come in. I know when it's going to hit my downwind airstream, and I'm busted, and it doesn't happen.
Yep.
That deer looks up and goes right back to feeding or right back to drinking or browsing or whatever, and then you go, that should not be happening right now. And that's when you're hooked. And that's when, absolutely. And that's when you're telling all your buddies, holy crap, I can't believe what this is doing. And that's, but it takes either a friend who's had that experience or when you've experienced it yourself. And I understand that a lot of people look at this and go, my gosh, but that's an investment.
Sure.
And it is, but what I tell people, if I had the choice of a $1,000 bow or a $500 bow and an Ozonics unit, I would take the $500 bow and the Ozonics unit every day.
Absolutely.
Because it doesn't matter how good. I don't care if I have a $20,000 bow. If that deer never gets in front of me, if it never presents the opportunity, it doesn't matter how good my bow performs, unless that opportunity. And Ozonics is one of the few products that can actually help create that opportunity.
I can't tell you how many hundreds and hundreds of deer we've fooled with those, and a lot of them on video. I mean, some of the coolest footage with the wind floaters going right to these big mature deer. But to me, there is absolutely not a feeling on earth that I hate worse than being in the right spot at the right time of the year that you've worked all year to get to and hearing the sound of a freaking doe snorting.
Absolutely.
Oh my! And at that moment, what would you pay?
And
you know what I mean?
Exactly. And the other thing is, we're busy. We have families. We've got other commitments. You only have so much time in the woods. Look at how much money you're putting into the ground in seed and fertilizer and trying to attract deer to your property or keep deer on your property. When you look at what you spent on that, this is not that big of an investment for the opportunity that it can create.
Well, and it's not something, I think a lot of people think, well, it might work some of the time or every once in a while. And it's so consistent. Once you learn the science behind the machine, it's just a tool.
Right.
It produces ozone and it blows it out with a fan.
Yep.
You got to learn how to use that and use the product
and use it properly.
And use it properly, have it set up, and there's a whole science behind all that. And we've talked about that a bunch of times in our podcast. But once you learn how to use it, you can almost predict the animal's reaction.
Right. Absolutely.
Depending on the time of year, the age of the animal, the sex of the animal, and now I can almost call what they're going to do.
And you'll know when you're not using it right.
That's right.
I mean, and it's only happened to me once, but it was like I had this set up totally wrong.
Yep.
I had it, in the wrong window of the blind. The air was blowing through, and I thought I had the right time. And this deer popped out at 8 yards, and she immediately snorted at me, and I went, "Yep, that's 100% on me." Because in a blind, this is deadly because you can control the airflow. I mean, you can control the airflow out of the window.
Well, that's the one thing that we didn't get to talking to Craig, because we started with talking about ozonics, and then we started talking about deer hunting, and that just you get Todd on deer hunting.
It happens every time.
We lose him, but. In your experience, and you talk to hundreds of people at these trade shows, what's the biggest mistake that you see people making? Because, I will say that having worked a couple of trade shows with you guys, I'm blown away at the amount of people that walk up and are absolutely blown away by the technology. And then you get the odd person that comes up and like, this thing's terrible, and it's 100% of the time, in my opinion, and I'm curious to see how you feel about it, is because of the way that they used it.
Yeah, there are really two factors. Either I can't overcome the environmental factors. The wind is too strong, it's raining hard, and I just can't overcome those environmental factors. I mean, I can't introduce enough ozone to overcome those, or I'm not using it properly. So if you're out there, and we've heard stories where I had it mounted above me, I had it at the 30-degree angle, I had it pointing in the direction of the wind, and I still got busted. Okay, where was your backpack? Well, I hung it on the tree next to me. Well, your backpack, unless you've treated that, and you've treated that, then that's got scent, and that scent is blowing, because you have to have your gear and yourself in that same air stream. So it's got to be in that same air funnel, and if it's not, that's one of the airs. The other air that we see, and this is on Ozonics, this is our fault, because for years, every advertisement has shown the unit over your head, pointing forward in front of you. And most people look at it and go, oh, that's what I do with it. I just hang it above my head and I point it forward and it's all good. No, you have to chase the wind. If the wind shifts, if the wind's blowing in your face, I need that unit pointing backwards and having it blowing behind me. If the wind's coming from left to right, I need that unit facing the right and blowing to the right. So if you don't adjust that, then you're not getting the ozone into the downwind airstream as quickly as possible, and the chance of your odor getting out in front of the ozone is what's going to spook them. So you have to make sure, and because we've always shown it in every advertisement, because the easiest way to show it is it's mounted ahead of me and the wind is blowing behind me, and people just assume that's all I need to do is mount it that one direction. No, you need to chase the wind. You constantly need to be adjusting it. Because you've got a fan in there that's blowing it out, and I don't want the wind fighting against that fan. I want that fan cooperating with it and introducing that ozone into the downwind airstream, whichever direction that's blowing, as soon as possible.
One of the ways I've always thought about it is picturing wind as water, essentially, flowing through a creek.
Yeah.
And so you've got, as the water flows around rocks and stuff, there's eddies and pools and things like that. Once you start using the technology and you start learning through different experiences and conditions, I mean, every hunt is a different condition.
Right.
You start to learn how to adapt the tool, the ozonics, around that. And most of the time it just revolves around having a real hard downward angle. And the way I describe it is you're forcing that ozone into your human scent so that there's no possibility.
Right, so it's mixing with it just like the water will mix. Yep, absolutely.
Well, we can't say enough about Ozonics. You guys have been, it's almost like a family. I mean, like Scott, I go in the trenches and kill for him.
Well, we appreciate this. We really sincerely appreciate the support. You guys have been great brand advocates, and at a time when, to your point, nobody was believing it, and people just didn't believe it. And again, if the number one complaint is it's too expensive, it all depends on how you look at it. When you look at the cost you invest in a bow, you go hunting someplace and you spend 3 or 4 nights in a hotel. You've spent as much on that hotel room as you will on this unit that you can use on every hunt. You look at all the expense and all the things that we do that we don't even think about it. A room's $180 a night or $100 a night. Yeah, no problem. Yep. And we rationalize that because that's what you expect. Yep. When you've grown up thinking an $8 bottle of scent control or scent spray is acceptable, that's why it's difficult. But when you realize how powerful it is, and you realize this is an investment in a tool that can do what very few other tools can do, it's a no-brainer. And
that's the big thing. And that's what we're trying to do is just shout it from the rooftops. They work.
Yeah.
This isn't a $500 thing you just hang up in a tree and it can't really see the results, or it might work. If you're using it properly, they are freaking dead and nuts, 100%
it's
awesome.
It's so easy to buy a $10 bottle of spray. maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, but just in case. No, I get it. But you don't have a problem throwing that $10 bill away, and you don't know if it's going to work or not, but it's not that expensive. But you know it works. Yep. And it's an investment, but it's an investment that's going to pay off over years. Look at how much you spend on your apparel. Look at how much you spend on your bow. Your arrows are $200 a dozen or what. I mean, if you look at everything that you spend the money on. And again, those arrows are great. We worked with an arrow company for many, many years as one of our clients. It can't create the opportunity. It cannot get the deer any closer to you. It can only maximize the opportunity when it presents itself. Ozonics can help create that opportunity, present the opportunity.
And I've always mentioned to people too, it's like, okay, you can spend $200 on a carbon suit, or you can spend this on that. What you're spending with an Ozonics, I guarantee you, works. Period. The other stuff is, well, show me the proof.
Right.
And nobody's ever been able to prove it with wind floaters and things like that. And that's where I think that was my for Ozonics and White Knuckle Productions and everything. Getting that big mature buck with those wind floaters going to him, it's undeniable.
Right.
You cannot deny that deer has to be smelling.
And I know the wind is going right to his nose.
Right to his nose.
I mean, you guys proved it.
And you see the
times.
reaction.
Yep.
So here's the challenge. Scent elimination industry. Beat us. Show us a bigger buck, a more mature animal. That was a 7-year-old deer at the time. Show us your footage. Prove that you have something better than Ozonics.
Right.
And then it was straight downwind.
And I'll say you're going to have the anomaly. There's going to be the story that he came in and he was so hot on a doe that that buck threw caution to the wind because he was so hot on a doe that he was too focused on the other aspect and he wasn't paying attention. But 9 times out of 10, if that buck is not on a hot doe, and here's the other thing. Everyone says, well, I've been out and I've seen plenty of deer without this product. Yes, you have, but it's not the deer you see. It's the deer you don't see.
Absolutely.
The mature bucks don't become mature. People say, well, you got to hunt the wind. But you have to understand, those mature bucks use that wind far more effectively than you ever will. And they only get to be 3.5, 4.5, 5.5, 6.5 years old because they've learned to scent check everything they're doing before they go. They won't step out into a field until they've scent checked it. They'll go downwind. And so in order to harvest those big mature animals, you've got to be using that exact same wind that they're using to your advantage. And the only way you do it is by using something like Ozonics that will eliminate that scent actively in the field. It's great to treat your clothing beforehand. And we have a product that can do that. And I encourage people to do that because the less scent you bring out into the woods, the more ozone there is to treat any odor that's coming off your body. But at the end of the day, it's the odor that you are creating every minute that you're out there in the field. As long as you're living, you're breathing, you're sweating, you're creating odor, and you have to actively treat that. I treat my clothing, the minute I step into the woods, it starts degrading. It starts taking on the odor of whatever's around me, in the truck, in the back of the truck, whatever. The dog comes up and licks my leg before I go out. They've just introduced more odor. And so I need something that will actively and continually treat that odor in the downwind airstream. And Ozonics is the only product that can do that.
And that's the reason why it's the only product that works in the field.
Yes.
And so consistently is because you've got to have that. You've got to have that steady flow of ozone, basically treating the scent you're putting out every second. And I mean, I'm a coffee drinker, so I drink coffee in the morning. All right, you want to talk about an obnoxious odor? And you hunt every day for week after week after week, and you get lazy in a lot of the areas. So for me, that's where Ozonics makes my life so much simpler. Hunting nowadays is that I can throw caution to the wind in certain aspects of my scent, and I don't even worry about my clothes.
I don't either. I hate to say it makes you almost lazy.
I know.
I mean, and part of the challenge is getting people to believe that you don't have to do that extensive ritual any longer. I don't need to shower and then wash my clothes and then put it in a safe bag and then travel out to the woods in my underwear and then put it on standing on a mat, and I don't have to do all that stuff. And I'm not telling you shouldn't, because for a lot of people, you just can't mentally move. Wait a minute, I don't have to do that. It's so hard to move on. So I don't have a problem with people doing that. If you believe it'll help. But I hate to say it, to your point, it makes you lazy because you don't have to.
Well, once you see the power of the machine, you're like, well, I don't need to do that.
I don't need to do that. Now, the less odor I can bring into the field, the more ozone there is to take on any active odor that I'm constantly producing. So it's better, but it's not necessary, not critical.
No, I can't say enough about Ozonics. I just thank you guys for your support over the years, and we'll continue to support you through thick and thin. And I know that and the courts will rule I'm pretty confident they're going to rule in your favor just based on what I know of the patents.
We'll see, and we don't know. But what we do know is that regardless of what happens, we're going to continue to drive and continue to try to provide the best product for actively destroying odor in the field.
Amen.
And that's all it's about.
Hey, you guys have created a product category. It's blowing up, and I know anything about the guys that are running the development. You will stay ahead of the competition with the new technology and probably know more about this science than they'll ever even imagine.
It's been a school of hard knocks.
Absolutely.
I mean, they've learned a lot throughout the years. And, honestly, the scent-free bags, the ozone bags, we brought one out 5 years ago.
Yeah,
and then pulled it off the market because we weren't ready, because after you learn more about the technology, you realize that there are a lot of things you have to know even about producing a bag in order to use it's such a powerful oxidant that you have to know how to use it properly in order to properly treat your equipment and your apparel. And so we had the bag, and then we just said, no, it's not ready, and pulled it off and had to introduce a bag. There's a baffle system in our dry wash bag. There's an entrance and there's an exit valve because you have to have air circulation. Mm-hmm. Ozone can only affect what it can touch. And if you don't have air moving, if you have a bag that puffs up and you can't pump any more into it, then you're not getting the true effects of the ozone. So
there you go. I know one thing. The science end of it, I don't know very much about, but I can tell you from the hunting side,
the results.
Oh my gosh, they're unbelievable. Yeah. So thank you so much.
Absolutely.
And thanks for listening to the White Knuckle Podcast.
Thanks, guys.
Well, that's a wrap. There you have it, our interview with Mr. Craig Enervold and Mr. Jeff Bergman from Ozonics. Thanks, guys, for taking the time to sit down with us there at Deerfest. They were right next to us in their booth, and they were busy the whole time, but we sincerely appreciate them taking time to sit down with us and sort of share their stories and share their knowledge of Ozonics and how it works, and then, talk a little bit about the business side of things as well. So with that, again, I want to remind everyone, because I sound like a broken record, that Ozonics, if you don't know it already, you should know it by now. They're factory ship direct only. And what that means to you is that we can give you a deal through Ozonics that we couldn't give you in the past because of the agreements that essentially they had with with retailers. So you can only buy an Ozonics unit by going to www.ozonicshunting.com. And if you want to get the WKP deal, it's ozonicsHunting.com/WKP, and you'll get the deal. I said it last week, and it's not ready yet. It'll be ready shortly when they have enough product available because of the overwhelming success of the product here this year with their new HR230 and the dry wash bag and the Kinetic Pack as a combination. They're running out of product quickly, but they'll be restocked here shortly, and we'll be able to offer you a WKP run and gun bundle. So don't forget to check that out when you see it on social media or hear it here on the podcast. With that, that's all for this week. Jason out.